Hello, Matrix Live, and today I'm with Nathan Freitas, project director of the Guardian project, which you may or may not know. If you do not know the Guardian project, you have probably used one of their apps. Nathan is here to talk about the Keanu platform and will explain a bit more on what it is. All I can tell you for the introduction is that it's a set of applications based on Matrix. So, Nathan, are you the director of the Guardian project?
I am, yes. I I founded this work formally, I think, in 2009. So we've been at it for a little while. But before that, from about 2004 on, I began seriously focusing on technology and human rights. And a lot of the focus we have on security and privacy comes from that. So we can talk more about that. And then even farther back to the late 90s, I became fascinated with early mobile devices, Nokia phones and Blackberries, and I even had an Apple Newton if you want to go further back. And so the idea of personal portable communication is sort of at my core, and that led to the founding of Guardian Project. And we have a really awesome team of about 20 core people, plus a number of other kind of partners and communities and people around us. And many of us have been working together for over 10 years. So it's a really great global team that I'm so happy to be a part of.
Right, so you mentioned mobile devices. So, what does the Guardian project do?
The idea that I had when I sought to found Guardian Project was like I understood the power and potential of smartphones in that in a lot of places in the world, the first and only computer that people might have, I could see would be a smartphone, right? And that I had already been working and training and helping communities around the world and saw the challenges of traditional computing in those places. And but I also saw that many of those folks were quite sophisticated already in using regular phones and texting and group calls and to organize to help themselves in their lives. And I said, wow, smartphones are going to be great because, especially with some of the standardized platforms around Java, less so with iOS as much, but still. Um, and, but what I realized in my years of also working in mobile computing in a enterprise corporate environment was that the designs for that environment, the sort of business user, enterprise user, wouldn't really trickle down to the regular human kind of in need, be it a farmer or a teacher or an activist or a human rights defender or a journalist who I really cared about those use cases a lot. So I wanted to design software for those people, what some might call a vulnerable population, but also communities at the front lines who are taking on challenges in their communities and trying to make positive change. And I wanted to design for them. So I said, let's build software for them first. Now, if you go back to 2009, the state of what was considered secure and private on a phone was abysmal and non existent. Um, and there were a couple of us thinking, wow, this is kind of Linux, it's kind of Java, what can we do? And this included talking with Moxie Marlinspike in the earliest days. I had already been working in encrypted SMS in J2ME on Java phones. I also, this is a Palm Tungsten series. I worked at Palm and helped design this. Um, and I built one of the first secure email apps for Palm Pilots back in 1999. And so, I understood what was possible and what we could do, but none of this existed on Android, for instance. So even though we wanted to get to the point of designing really, bespoke and beautiful and interesting software for human rights defenders, we're like, now we need to start at the ground level because most of the building blocks aren't there. And so some of those building blocks were things like encrypted SQLite for encrypted data storage. And so we worked with Zetetic and the SQL Cipher project, and we brought SQL Cipher to Android, and that's one of the main secure database libraries that Signal uses, and WeChat, for instance. Strange bedfellows. Um, Then we saw that um, we needed more secure networking capability. So we worked on some stuff with TLS, but then we ported Tor to Android because, wow, if you could get Tor running on Android, then you could really improve privacy and security and communications. And so we were, the team that brought Tor to Android. Then we said, we need a more secure chat solution. And we were already avid users of off the record encryption with Pigeon and XMPP on desktops. And there was an OTR Java library. And so we were the team that really built the first encrypted chat app for Android. And it was called Jibberbot and became Chat Secure. And so we worked for years with Chris Ballinger on Chat Secure, which was also on iOS, to do XMPP with OTR encryption, and then eventually OMIMO encryption. So these were these building blocks on top of which we wanted to be able to build more interesting applications like we're doing today. We also worked on PGP and a bunch of other things. So we have this core group of really great, talented, sophisticated developers who are in the Debian community, in the Tor community, in different security communities who've helped bring these building blocks into Android. And then we have another layer of designers, digital security trainers, activists, people that say, okay, that's great, but how do we make something that's specifically tuned for women journalists, or specifically tuned for Chinese or Tibetan dissidents, or that's specifically tuned for delivering news content in areas that are disconnected because of political strife or natural disasters? How do we serve these people? And then we use these building blocks to build those applications. What we see all too often is that people will jump to build those solutions for people that in need without those building blocks of openness and security and privacy. And then they deliver applications that cause more harm in the end, that leak data, that allow bad actors to infiltrate. And so our motto is to have that strong foundation. And so what's been exciting in the last few years is that, we saw that XMPP was fine, but it really didn't have a vibrant community. It wasn't looking towards the future. It wasn't flexible enough for all the things we wanted to do. And we took a hard look and said, Matrix really is our foundation piece for secure messaging moving forward, and we need to make that shift. So there's an example where for us, Matrix now is this secure building block for any kind of messaging solution. So.
All right, and this is what led you to create the Keanu platform.
Yeah.
All right, so what is the Keanu platform actually?
So we, first of all, it's the name, of course, is kind of a joke. It's called Keanu because that's the Polynesian word for wind. It's not because of some actor in Hollywood in some silly movie. And I make a lot of dumb jokes. So, but I do love the analogy of wind, or the idea of, instead of the World Wide Web, I think a lot about worldwide wind, because wind is less predictable or less fixed. It's more dynamic. And a web is kind of this thing that is maybe more fixed, but quite fragile. And so I think a lot about wind and as a design pattern for work we do. So Keanu does have some meaning behind it. But from there, it's the collection of efforts we have for doing novel things with secure messaging. So one of the first things we wanted to do is build actually the first thing is, we do have a group chat application, but we don't release Keanu as just a standalone group chat. We don't need any more of those in the world. There are a number of, Element is fantastic. There's a number of beautiful other clients and solutions trying to either replicate WhatsApp or Signal or Slack. That's not what we do. Now, in some cases, we do build, or communities have adopted our code to build their own branded chat apps for kind of niche and small communities, intranets or human rights groups or different communities who want to have their own branded app. And we make that really easy. So that's the Keanu Connect, which is a easy to rebrand and deploy client, but also a whole server stack. So we have our own way of deploying Synapse and Signal, as we call it, and all of that stack. So that's done, and we don't really do that publicly, but people adopt our code there for different use cases. Then I always wanted something where, like, a lot of users in our community actually have trouble installing new apps on their phone because their phones don't have a lot of storage, or they're really nervous about having an app on their phone because their phones get checked at checkpoints or by, in a lot of situations, phones are not a safe place, honestly, what you have on your phone. They didn't want a persistent experience. And so I said, what if we could build a more ephemeral, incognito, browser-based, web experience on top of Matrix? And that is Convene. And so Convene is a pure PWA, static web client for Matrix that you can just get into, almost like a Jitsi Meet via a link. We'll auto-generate an account for you. You can use it in this ephemeral way, or you can stay persistent if you want. But also the creator of the room has a way of making a room self-destruct and kick everyone out and redacting all the messages. So it's a very easy to deploy, ephemeral browser-only solution. And that is being used today for communities that are doing kind of knowledge dissemination, be it in a digital security training environment, for working with lawyers in local areas, or journalists to help teach them what their rights are and how they can do that work. It is being expanded to, we work with a lot of women journalists in Latin America, where there's a lot of different hostile bad actors around them in their lives, not just the ones you might expect. We also have worked with a lot of LGBTQ populations in places like Middle East and North Africa, where, again, their phones are often inspected by parents or church members or teachers or partners. There's just a lot of people that need that kind of ephemeral communication capability. So that's another example where, yeah, Element is great, Hydrogen is great, but we needed something a little bit different in our threat model. So, and then that ties into something like Circle, or what, as it's known publicly, Circulo, which is really the most novel user experience. And it's a status check-in app saying, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm good, I need help. This is designed on an experience called Circle of Six, designed by filmmaker and women's rights activist Nancy Schwartzman, who realized that, like, a certain kind of group chat could be used to fight sexual violence and harassment in college campuses. And then she wanted to bring it to a more global use case to support women who face a lot of physical violence or even online harassment. And so, again, Matrix, there was a number of other solutions built for this. None of them used encryption. They all had terrible backends. They didn't think about privacy. We built this on top of our Keanu core, on top of Matrix. Everything is end-to-end encrypted. Everything uses pseudonyms, no phone numbers, no emails. And it was co-designed with these communities of women journalists in a, unfortunately due to COVID, remote way, but in a very intensive way. So we're really excited about that application and how it could expand to safety check-in kind of apps for a variety of use cases. So I use it with my own children. So when they're walking to another place in town and they want to tell me check in, they use Circulo to check in with me. And that means their location, their data, everything is totally private and encrypted. I'm not turning it over to Facebook. I'm not turning it over to some random Life 360. Wait, did I say that? Random application that's horribly designed. So yeah. Anyway, so it's a lot. And if I want to boil all of that down, like, Keanu is a place where we build these novel experiences on top of this secure core that's powered by Matrix.
Right. I really like, you said one thing that I do not hear often enough, and it's threat model. I really like that you are not just a privacy maximalist, and you try to apply the right protections against the right threats, and having a proper threat model and properly designed apps is super important to actually protect what matters for the people who are concerned. I had a
And I
quick
just
look.
want to give a little, shout out there to our design partners at OK Thanks, and also great organizations like Simply Secure, and a whole other communities like Localization Lab we work with. These are groups that through design, through community building, through engaging with the real people around the world that are not just like generic activists, help inform us and teach us how to have the proper threat models, and also that these are real people who have real needs and have a desire for a certain user experience. So.
Yeah, exactly. And what I really like about what you said is, to me, it sounds like Matrix is a sort of multi-purpose toolkit that you can use to adapt it to make more focused applications for given populations, for specific populations. And I really like the way you have been doing that.
Yeah.
Another thing you said that I really like is that you use end-to-end encryption with your kids to protect them. So maybe some lawmakers want to lend an ear. You do not need to break end-to-end encryption to protect children.
Well, I have another example of that. So we also built an app called Haven that we co-designed with Edward Snowden. And Haven turns an Android phone into a personal security monitoring device, right? So again, instead of saying, I want to protect my home, I'm going to put cameras from Amazon and Google and whoever in my home. Haven uses a decentralized app, uses all the data is on the phone. And then when we said, okay, we want to build remote notifications. How should we do this, right? And first we built in Tor, which is great. And you can access your phone as a Tor Onion service. And the next thing we did is actually we got Signal working. I really wanted Signal to be a platform. I still do, right? I'm always hacking on Signal, and we have a whole Signal chatbot infrastructure. It is so hostile to us as developers, right? I mean, like, I personally know Moxie, and he won't answer any questions. I mean, he's not even there anymore, but they don't consider themselves a platform to build things on. They see that as like an unfortunate side effect of how their code is public. And so now we're in the process of ripping Signal out of Haven and building Matrix in. And I bring it up on the kid front is because a lot of people want to use Haven as an encrypted, secure baby monitor. It's still the number one use case is like a thing you would actually put next to in your child's room if you needed to like have some extra peace of mind that they were safe. So Matrix just is a real toolkit and platform for these kind of things that is designed that way, as opposed to having us kind of hack stuff into. So.
Right. How about we have a look at a few of those apps to see what it's like in practice?
All right. Yeah, so Convene is at letsconvene.im. This is the sort of one of the public faces of the Convene code. It's actually so easy to deploy. Anyone can just drop the built. It's implemented in Vue. You can build it and drop it on pretty much any web server and point it at our public Neo server or at any other Matrix server. So we have some use cases and things, but the main thing is to open a private room. Again, this is built on like a Jitsi model where you just create a room. You also get an identity. So I'm using this in incognito mode. So we have a bunch of built-in identities, but you could also change your identity to be anything you want. So I could be, Nathan, or just so I will then name my room as this is a great place and set a description. I can also set an icon. So in one click, I'm creating the room, I'm provisioning my account, I'm setting up encryption, and now I have my this is a great place room, and it tells me some things about the room. So the room is set that anyone can join, but it's anyone can join but not publicly listed, right? So this makes it easy to just share a link. If I go into the room info here, there's also a QR code so that someone could just scan this. So imagine you're on your phone, you create this room in your phone's browser, your friends next to you, they scan the QR code, they join. It's quite easy to get everyone in. I can also lock down the room and invite people specifically if I want, but our default model is this sort of public but unlisted. And yeah, now at this point, I can chat, of course. The rendering that we have is, especially if you narrow it, it's quite reminiscent of messaging applications. I can, I don't know what I have here. Is a picture of John Lewis. Okay. So we support multimedia, any files really, but we also have a built-in voice messaging that works in mobile browsers really well. I can press and hold. And yeah, and I get a nice kind of standard user experience here for that. Again, I can have other rooms as well, so I can create a second room. And then I can switch between them. So I could have a kind of a public room and then invite certain people to a private room. So now I can switch back and forth between the rooms quite easily. But we're not sort of, again, the UI is meant to be streamlined and not have a sidebar all the time. And most people are probably just in one room and then they leave. That's why leave is so prominent. And then the last part of this is I can edit my profile and create a password and kind of have a more permanent identity if I would like to. But the model that we've also really focused on is this delete room model. So at the bottom, if I select delete room, all members and messages will be removed. The action cannot be undone. So it'll do a countdown and it notifies everyone else in the room. And then it will redact all messages in the room and then kick everyone out. And then finally, you yourself leave the room. So boom, the room is gone. One thing we're working on is easier integration with matrix.2 links and the ability to just share this with anyone in any kind of matrix room. It is just a standard matrix room on our Keanu server, so I could easily join this from another client if I would like, if I want to. And I can see if I could do that right now. Let's see, I'm going to join. Okay, you can see Nate Freight joined the chat. And I can send things as fully interoperable as expected. And so that's me on matrix.org chatting through here. The beauty is you could also deploy this on an unfederated server that's totally locked down and private, and even on an intranet or different environments. So yeah, so we have a lot of ways that this code is deployed. And if you look at the code base for Keanu and from Keanu.im, you'll find the Keanu Weblight project here. And the build information is pretty easy and it's easy to customize. And again, you could build this as a static app and just drop it in any web server. But there's various customizations around branding. And so as one final example, we're working with a union group called Workers Tech Hub. And if you go to Workers Tech Hub/chat, you'll see a convene instance. So that's now integrated in their website. And then if you go to Workers Tech Hub/meet, you'll see actually a convene instance that's integrated with a Jitsi instance side by side. So you can have a chat room and a Jitsi room all together right here with encrypted, all of the best of Matrix and the best of Jitsi. So we have people kind of deploying this in interesting ways already. So that's the demo for Convene. There's a very nice video on the Circulo website that has, it's in Spanish, but it has English subtitles for how to use Circulo. I can give you the link, and maybe that would be an easier way to kind of just show a little bit of it.
Okay, so quite a few interesting applications, and I really find them super polished, which is fundamental, I think, to get people to use them, because not everyone is a cryptographer or not everyone is nerd, actually. There are just some regular people out there who still want security. So one of those things that struck me too is most of those apps are free, but developing them and hosting the services has a cost. So who is paying?
Well, first of all, I want to share our holographic stickers that you can have for one Ethereum coin. No. No, we don't sell merch. Actually, we need to sell more merch. Funny thing, I've been in nonprofits for a long time, on boards of directors and stuff, and selling T-shirts and stickers and mugs and stuff can really bring in a lot of money if you have good designs. So that's one thing, as a side note. But so I mentioned before our focus on human rights and humanitarian applications and solutions, and all of our funding, well, the majority of our funding comes from grants, from foundations, from nonprofits, from groups that get grants from the government, and then they say, hey, we're supposed to be helping this group of people from different governments around the world. I mean, the UK and Swedish and American, and there's a number of really public, granting organizations around humanitarian and human rights, for instance. But a lot of big companies get these, or big organizations, and then they're like, oh no, how are we actually going to build this stuff? And like I said before, sometimes they've just gone out to a random webuildapps.com company, which has usually ended badly. But more and more they come to organizations like us with a reputation and a track record and transparency, and they say, hey, we have a grant to help women journalists in Latin America from this news foundation organization, and we need your help, and we're going to do all of the kind of community building and outreach stuff. So we work with like Article 19, a global human rights organization, and when they actually need to build and deploy technology, they have the insight and wisdom to say they shouldn't do that themselves in-house, for instance. We also, compete for grants. So Mozilla hosted a Wireless Innovation Network Summit. Some WINS, WINS, I forget it now. It was money from the National Science Foundation in the US that powered a competition for building decentralized, semi-off-grid solutions to connect people in the United States who need more connectivity. We focused on Puerto Rico, and in a hurricane aftermath kind of scenario, and we ended up getting third or fourth prize in that, and that was a nice chunk of money. And then we do get kind of not donations as much, but we we worked with Freedom of the Press Foundation on the Haven app, and they did kind of a crowd raise where Edward Snowden said, hey, everyone, this is an idea I have, and they built it, and can we get money donated? So, my background in that kind of, fundraising from different diverse sources, working on grants, working on contracts. Most recently, we just announced a 3-year funding from the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, where in fact they're funding us to kind of just continue our work on the decentralized web and decentralized technologies in general, with a focus on human rights and humanitarian applications. There is no requirement for us to actually use Filecoin or use IPFS or anything, but of course they would like us to. But we have an established track record and identity, and they want to show that decentralized technologies have a place in human rights and humanitarian use cases. So yeah, so I spend just a lot of time, connecting with organizations like this, and another part of our kind of growing sustainability is actually through things like Keanu. So there is a goal of Keanu, and we do have the capacity. And as I've said, other people have taken our code and deployed it with their own brand and their own solutions. And so we haven't sort of fully announced that, but we are for hire. If you want to build on any of our 4 use cases, or you have other custom use cases, or you want to rebrand some of our things, or you need custom server deployments on various cloud platforms, this is what we do. And we have a whole team ready to do it, and already doing it in kind of commercial production environments. So, our hope is that while the business of Element and kind of all of the great deployments in various education and government sectors have grown that field, we also hope that some of these more novel use cases and needs will emerge where there's a business opportunity for us. So I think a diverse set of funders is really best for us. And but in the end, our apps are free because the people we're trying to help often don't have the means to pay for them. And they are open source, and without ads and trackers, we're not monetizing any data, right? So the axiom of like, if you're not paying, then you are the product. In this case, someone is paying on your behalf, essentially. A foundation, a philanthropist, a patron, often your own tax dollars. If in the US government grant model, say National Science Foundation, that's my tax dollars coming back to me to build something to help you. So it's not, it's free apps these days don't always have a very good reputation, but I assure you our free apps are supported by a more ethical and sustainable approach. So.
And they're open so people can check in the code that you are not doing nasty things.
100%.
All right. So yes, in short, public grants, and you are trying to open up to more hiring with white labeling and consultancy around the Keanu platform.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. You already answered a bit that question, but I'm still tempted to ask you to expand a bit on why you choose Matrix to build those apps on.
Yeah. Well, part of it was, we were deep in the XMPP space. And I think at some point we were the maintainers of OMIMO, and we were trying to update the servers, and it was just too much of a lift for us to be that central when we wanted to do other things on top of it. Also, while many XMPP proponents will say, that XMPP can be in JSON and isn't just XML, we just wanted something that was more kind of web native, and JSON over HTTP, in fact, just fits better in a lot of the kind of privacy and anti-censorship mechanisms that we rely on. That if it just looks like web traffic, that's better for everybody. If you're talking on a non-standard port, using a non-standard protocol, using uncertain ways to kind of secure and encrypt that port and protocol, that is just not good. People stand out. So we wanted something that just blended in with the traffic of the web. We also wanted, more mature developer toolkits and documentation and clear support for developers, and a modern encryption that was double ratchet and based on kind of what we knew as Signal and audited and had some vision for the future and momentum. And ultimately, we didn't want to be kind of the ones leading the charge. We have the things we want to do, and to see that you all, in the various forms of the foundation and New Vector and different teams, there was like a plan and a vision happening there and momentum, and that really gives us confidence that we can build on this. And there's sort of oxygen in there, and life in the future. So.
All right, so from your answer, if I could say that with my own words, it would be that you were not only looking for a robust platform from a technical perspective, but also from a business perspective, from a sustainability perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. While also, it's that thing I just described, this balance between sustainable and open and community and transparent, but with the vision for the future, and the team at. It's still, who's Matrix Foundation versus New Vector and all the various versions that I don't always fully understand, but I see there's momentum and vision. There's, people putting in that work beyond just the technical stack, and that's really important for us. And because I get the same questions from my funders and from my communities, like, well, who's supporting this, and how do we know it's going to keep working? Because everyone's putting their reputation along the line, down to the digital security trainer in rural Guatemala who's telling their community, hey, this is the thing, So I think that confidence and and transparency that you all have shown together has gave us the decision, really that moment of like, I think it's time to shift. I think it's time to change. It was just that core feeling of confidence.
Right. It's really heartwarming to see that you trust us to do the right thing and to be there
Yeah,
in a few years still.
I'm trusting you. I'm looking right.
One thing I'm wondering, we've been talking about using Matrix as a platform to build apps on top of that. Maybe you're adding some features that are not in the Matrix protocol, or are you not? Are your applications 100% compatible with Matrix? Can I use, for example, if somebody is on Convene, can me being on Element talk with them?
Yes, yeah, absolutely there. There are things and ways of using some of the technology that maybe is a little non-standard. So, but it's always interoperable. So, for example, in Circulo, so a circle is a room simply, and the way we render the circle of is each person's latest source top post that's not a reply is their latest status, right? And then everyone just replies to that in a thread. So a circle is essentially a view of statuses and their replies. And then when you resolve your status, it redacts all of that, right? So we're using redaction in a weird way. We're using threads kind of in a non-standard way. We're rendering it. But if you open that room in Element, that's what you would see. You would see messages with a bunch of replies, and then you would scroll up and you'd see redactions forever. So it's just a more kind of creative use of the room, but it's still interoperable. We've had voice messaging support for a long time, for a few years in our work, before Element had it, and so in that case, we were just sending voice messages as m.file. Um, Obviously, now there's kind of a way officially to do it. Things like stickers we've had for years in our app, and in the XMPP world, we use short codes to represent stickers and had kind of client-side sticker packs. Um, People still like that for some reason. So there's some things that will show up in Element as like a weird short code when you try to share a sticker. So we're just having these kind of discussions really about that. But the goal is always interoperability and more where we can upstream things. As another example, we think you should be able to reply to a message with a media, a voice message replied to a text message. And I think that's maybe not, it is supported in the spec, but it's not supported in the Android and iOS SDKs, for instance. And so I think we've added that now, and we also want to upstream that code and submit it. And we've submitted a few bug fixes as well. So we're also trying to maintain interoperability there. We do have our own forks of the SDKs to do small changes here and there, but as much as we can upstream, we will. So
Right. For the sake of completeness, I think there is a little thing in the spec that says you cannot do the replies with a text message to a voice message, but I think that's something that should be fixed eventually.
yeah,
So
well, and that definitely. I mean, we work with a lot of communities in the sort of Asian, Pacific region, and a lot of these groups are voice messaging first. It's like all they do. And
yeah,
so these are, but people will reply to a voice message with maybe a short emoji or some other message, or someone will post a document and they'll reply with a voice message. So
yeah.
the idea of being less kind of text centric is key for us.
Yeah, I can understand, for example, somebody who's not, maybe somebody doesn't know how to read, or it can be a child who doesn't know how to read and just want to send a voice message. So yes, it does make sense.
Yeah. Well, and actually building on that, for communities where their languages are in peril of being lost, or where they're, like Tibetan communities or Uyghur communities in the China context, where they are considered minority groups and their languages are deprioritized, a lot of the children don't have a chance to learn the written language. And maybe they can speak it. They can speak a dialect. They can speak kind of a certain amount. And so this is keeping languages alive in many communities where the prime sort of official education system doesn't support the written language. So it's really important for so many reasons.
Right, and I definitely do understand that sometimes you have to step aside a little from the standard to get the thing done because you need it right now. But I really, really appreciate the fact that you consider the fallbacks and maybe upstreaming the changes eventually.
Yeah.
I'm happy you are not trying to make a matrix like, but you are still using matrix to build a product and to upstream the changes. Did you want to add anything to conclude the episode, Nathan?
Well, we are. I mentioned some of the work we're doing with off-grid, kind of decentralized things, and we are really excited about dendrite and pine cone. And again, what I think we bring to the table there is very concrete use cases um, of where we have communities we work with after hurricanes, or when there's a countrywide power outage due to government situations, and where there's for a long time the story of the streets net and weekly packet in Cuba is it may be well known about how they built sort of a giant LAN network that are citywide, right? And then they use sneaker nets of hard drives and thumb drives to distribute content. And through our work with, and another thing we support is F-Droid, the open decentralized app store. It's Hans Christoph Steiner is a Guardian Project core team member for a very long time. And so we were really excited years ago when there was a store in Cuba running F-Droid hotspot, with app stores and a decentralized kind of Cuban street net model. Is so great to see. And we've been building on that and having Dendrite running on a Raspberry Pi in an off-grid kind of LAN network hotspot with Convene on top of it as the user experience, so that anyone can come, can chat. But then when you add Dendrite Pinecone onto that, where you have people's phones coming and going and synchronizing state between different disconnected hotspots that maybe are all sharing the same decentralized room, it really opens up so many possibilities for this kind of ad hoc ephemeral, you sync when you can, but you're not always having connectivity. I think so. I'm really excited about that work, and we're bringing. Right now we're integrating Dendrite into our Raspberry Pi build that we have deployed in some places. So I'm excited to share more about that. And we have an Android. We've embedded Dendrite in an Android app we call the Keanu microserver. That also has Convene built into it. So you can turn your phone into a hotspot and people can use a chat web server off of it. So I think that there's so many good things about Dendrite, that you're supporting another implementation of the server. That's important. That you're looking at other technologies like Go and Rust. I know there's Rust work happening. And that we're also thinking about models of communication that are not just always the cloud. So, and are more wind. So hence Keanu. So so we're going to be more active in that work and really appreciate all the innovation going on there.
So will we have a follow-up episode on
Yes.
new tech and new applications coming?
Yeah, with other people than me. So there's a great team of people out there. And hopefully we'll be popping up in Matrix rooms more. We're really busy. We spend a lot of time with our communities. We spend a lot of time out in the world. Obviously, the pandemic, all of us have been spending time just keeping our lives in order and together. But we're doing our best to participate more in the Matrix community and show up how we can. So I appreciate you having me on the show. And, we're on, anyone come by our rooms, but also we'll be being better community members as well in the coming weeks and months.
I'm going to leave in the description of the episode links to the spaces where we can find you, or the rooms. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't remember. Do you have spaces?
We have a private space. I'm not sure if we have a public space yet. So I'll see. Yes, we will have a space.
So I'm going to give links to how to reach out to you. Thanks a lot, Nathan. It was super informative episode. I really like the vision you have. I really like the work you have been doing at the Guardian project and what you are doing with the Keanu platform. Thanks a lot for being my guest today, and I see you around Matrix Live. Bye-bye.
See you around. Thank you.